Welcome to the Blue Swan podcast. Today we have Eric Pasoja, who is the co-chair of LA's New Technology Committee and an avid actor, entrepreneur as well. Multiple patents have been invented.
No, my main focus, aside from being a full-time actor, is AI and digital identity protection. That's my real focus, and not only in support of actors, but in support of humanity.
Your journey started with something that happened during voiceover and motion capture acting for Call of Duty Advanced Warfare in 2014. Is that right?
Yeah, I did the game. I played a Belgian geneticist. I was the henchman to Kevin Spacey's character. No, he didn't hit on me. And so we worked on the set where they did Avatar. So now I show up at work, and there are 50 other people here. We're all dotted up, and they're like, here are the contracts to sign. So we all signed. I assume SAG-AFTRA standard contract. And it's like acting in the round. You don't even have cameras, so you can just move and act. And it's for the interstitials of the game. The game came out 6 months later, and a friend called and said, "Hey, Eric, my son just shot you." It turns out they'd taken my face and put it on a PvP player. So you can pay $30 to run around shooting at other people's children, which with my face, which if you knew me is not okay. And they didn't ask my consent, and they didn't pay me another dime for it, even though they were monetizing, and the game made over $1 billion that year. So 10 years later, we went on strike, and I realized, what about that 22-year-old with a voice like Janice and Whitney who shouldn't get it stolen from her for $50,000? Because it's a lot of money at the time, but she should be making Adele money. So the question is, when we went on the AI strike, do I sit there and just focus on myself, or do I, as an AI nerd, do I go help people? And so I struck, I was active, I became co-chair of the SAG-AFTRA LA New Tech Committee. And like I say often, my commitment in support of our great union is to protect, manage, and monetize the digital identities of 170,000 SAG-AFTRA performers at the dawn of artificial intelligence. I don't represent SAG-AFTRA. The only member who can do that is our president, Sean Astin.
Okay.
Staff can do that, but I can speak in support of our members. And believe me, I really work hard to help performers.
And so there's a lot going on with AI and entertainment. And so recently, the Creative Coalition on AI was started, and that was announced in, I think, the Hollywood Reporter about 2 days ago. Do you happen to know anything about that?
I have a couple on people in that group that are close allies with whom I communicate. I'm actually meeting with one of them later today. And one of the things for sure is it's about time. If you take a look, we have a group called protectdigitalidentity.org. If you check out protectdigitalidentity.org, many people in that coalition signed our open letter. There are about 850 celebrities and union leaders and people who signed a letter saying, hey, we need digital identity protections. Hey, legislators, we need some laws to protect the rest of people, child pornography, deep faking, publicly elected servants, etc. So that creative coalition is another strong, with famous people, active, like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and others, who are saying, we actually need to look out for our creative community and make sure that AI is brought in ethically. But they expand beyond that because they're dealing with AI safety as well, which is another passion of mine, but it's sort of out of the scope of my expertise. But we have bills in California like SB 53, which is a less toothy version of SB 1047 that got vetoed by Newsom last year. But this year, that SB 53 is an AI safety conversation where big companies have to declare what their safety standards are. And that group is also involved with that work, but also, of course, with artists of all kinds.
And so in terms of those safety standards that companies are now required to use in terms of generative AI and entertainment, how do you foresee that playing out with ongoing mergers between, giants like Warner Brothers and Netflix?
I'm going to give you a perspective that hasn't really had light shown on it yet, but just know that safety is a separate conversation from digital identity protection, likeness, voice movement, and copyright. Because safety is like saying, how do we know someone won't use a ChatGPT to build a biological weapon? That's AI safety. It's a huge conversation. Our government has not dealt with it yet, which is a real concern. I'm dealing with deepfakes, and for the most part, that AI safety really needs to be columnized. Great thinkers like Geoffrey Hinton and Mr. Moskowitz, they really are dealing with that right now. And so is the Creative Coalition. In terms of Hollywood, this is where we are. It may be Netflix or Paramount plus Skydance that will acquire Warner Brothers. So, and just note that Warner Brothers is about $90 billion and Netflix is $500 billion. Here's my question. Wait till you see who acquires Netflix. Microsoft is $3.7 trillion. If you look at the top 10 valuated companies in the world, 9 of them are the tech companies. Number 6 is Saudi Aramco Oil. Number 11 is Warren Buffett. We're talking Apple, NVIDIA, Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, Google, that whole group. Amazon does. Google does. YouTube is bigger than all of them. Microsoft doesn't have one yet. And by the way, they own Activision and thus have my digital identity. And they also own Xbox. So I think that Hollywood has about 2 to 3 years left. In terms of the acquiring, I think it is incumbent upon everyone in Hollywood, studios, actors, directors, writers, IATSE members, to actually form a coalition, a focused coalition to make sure that our content and our digital identities are protected from AI copyright and digital identity infringement.
And so you're saying 2 to 3 years for the whole production cycle. Like, and so I've talked to a lot of people, and a number of them think that the high level acting skills, when somebody knows 70 different ways to cry, are not going to be as easily transferred to, generative modeling in the next 2 to 3 years. And at this rate, it is feasible, but to what degree of change are you thinking about within that period?
Well, yeah, there are a couple really important questions in there. So let me get to Tilly Norwood in a moment. Remind me. The conversation is this. I've been to a number of AI summits, and I keep hearing from very excited people in our industry, the democratization of creativity. Oh my gosh, anyone can now make a movie. 4 years ago, not anyone could make a good movie, but we have AI doing some things very well and reducing effort. Let me give you an example. There is an app that will break down a script in 2 minutes. Usually takes 4 producers in a room for 3 days going, what are all the props we need in scene 1? We can also dub you in 120 languages and move your lips. We don't even need to, deal with that sector anymore in terms of dubbing our movie. If I need B-roll, I can just prompt to Sora 2, Mercedes S-Class driving up an autumn highway in the Adirondacks, fall colors. And I don't have to spend $50,000 to fly IATSE members out there to film it. So here's the thing. What do we need studios for? Why do I need a lawyer to tell me they like my script when I can get a little bit of money and make a studio quality movie? So that's the first thing. And by the way, guess who makes all those tools? The tech companies. So here's the other side of the conversation, which is that my son and I went to see No Battle. What is it? No Battle. I want No Battle Left Unfinished. The Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn movie. By the way, sorry guys, I love the movie. Sean Penn gave a performance of a lifetime and a lifetime of performances. It was a #1 box office movie the weekend. It was my son, me, and 20 other people in the movie theater. So stars are not getting people to the movies. Tom Cruise will. I don't know how many people Brad Pitt got to F1. Nobody's going to the movies. People are staying home and they're watching it on a 73-inch screen. But even that is minuscule compared to what TikTok, what YouTube, and other distribution models have. So let me give you the final thing. Mr. Beast. We know who Mr. Beast is. He's a #1 influencer. He gets more daily views than the Olympics. So the distribution model of Hollywood narrative films is in jeopardy. And Hollywood is, I went to a summit recently where the head of A2 spoke, and he said 8 of the top 10 films this year are sequels. The other 2 are second sequels. So Hollywood is not generating the kind of movies that people want to see anymore. And people are not going to see movies. So if you're going to tell me that Hollywood is going to get through this, you're going to have a good argument as to how. And nobody has an answer.
No, I honestly think that what may happen with the unions.
I will say this from my experience talking with legislators, both state in California, in Tennessee, where the Elvis Act was passed, in New York, and also federal legislators. I understand that one bill has passed U.S. Congress regarding AI this year. That's the Take It Down Act. Ted Cruz championed it, and Melania Trump practically stood on top of it. It's anti-pornography. What Republican or Democrat is going to say pornography is okay? So that passes. No others. We have the president issuing an executive order for a moratorium on the patchwork of state laws. There are no federal laws to back it up. There are hundreds of millions of dollars of lobbying money from $25 trillion of tech companies coursing through the East Coast and through state legislators. How in the world do we think that legislation is going to beat industry? Industry has to lead it. Industry has to say, okay, there are rights, for example, in California, in Tennessee, in New York, that says you can't steal my digital identity. It's illegal. So great. How do we enforce that? That's where industry comes in. How are you going to stop people from stealing? By the way, take a look at all the other industries where deepfakes are a serious issue. Medicine, insurance, a whole bunch of other industries where there's a lot of scamming now. I've thoroughly vetted some of these industries with interviews. And once industry realizes they can stop hemorrhaging money because of AI, then everybody else will jump on board. And I think human rights will come last. Human property will come sooner. And if my digital identity is my property, then I have something to fight for in terms of industry. We need to do it on the ground, my opinion.
No, I agree entirely. And so, how do you think that this will affect the, issues with things like derivative copyrights? With entertainment, there's a spin out of a parent copyright on something like, let's say, Spider-Man. And so then you've got the artwork that's copyrighted. You've got separate copyrights for books, videos, and then sequels, so on and so forth. And so if companies like Disney are investing $1 billion in open AI and allowing them to sort of, essentially generate off of their initial copyrights. So how do you see that playing out?
Well, you open up a big can of worms. I was one of the organizers of the AB 412 march last week on Monday. 180 people lined up at Stanford to testify and support copyright. AB 412 is now being made a 2-year bill. It basically says if you ingest copyrighted works into your large language model, you have to put what you ingested on a website, and it has to be fingerprintable. And guess who's fighting against it? So here's the conversation. Disney, if I want to license your work, I pay you to license the work. Disney's paying OpenAI so OpenAI can license Disney's work. Disney's staunching the bleeding at this point. So note that all of the copyright that is out there by studios is completely at risk now. They're opt out. But guess what? Performers are opt in. In fact, there's a new bill that was signed by Newsom recently called SB 683, which says that I, as a performer, I can yank down any deepfake of me off the internet within 48 hours, cease and desist. So note, they're opt out. We're opt in. So not only can we help each other, we can help the studios by yanking down all sorts of illicit studio property with human deepfakes in it, because we have that right and they don't. But they can protect our digital identity by labeling our media, which is the solution. If they label everything, which, by the way, are in the new AI transparency laws that are coming into effect in California in August. Also, people, believe it or not, Josh Hawley and Senator Rosenthal in the U.S. House and Senate are actually dealing with protecting copyright on a federal level. And there's a bill going through Fed as well, hopefully the No Fakes Act, which has been around a while, that will create a federal right of publicity for humans. So there is a conversation about a coalition that could happen if we all team up and protect copyright from a digital identity angle. Right now, copyright is under serious threat. Research academic papers, anyone's writing, definitely studio property, photographs, everything is under assault. And it's going to be a hard-won battle because of two cases that have just been going through the courts. The English High Court, Getty Images sued, was it Jim Cameron's company, Stability AI? And then there's the Cox Cable lawsuit that the Supreme Court just heard. The tech companies are finding ways, quite frankly, to really confuse the courts to understand what AI is all about and how it works. Let me give you an example. British High Court said, well, a language model doesn't really store the infringed copyright. So technically there's no storage, and so they don't have any infringement material in them. And I said, I wrote an article in LinkedIn, you can check it out, that says they don't understand AI. Let me give you an example. There's a generator called Midjourney. It creates images. If I type in a prompt, it gives me 4 images. If I typed in Bugs Bunny, it gives me 4 Bugs Bunnies. Now, am I the infringer because I typed Bugs Bunny? Or is the AI company the infringer because it has Bugs Bunny stored in the neural pattern? Not traditional storage, but it's in there. So we can't be looking at storage the way we looked at it in 1995. It's a whole different paradigm. Furthermore, Sean, and this is an important point, I don't have to type Bugs Bunny to get Bugs Bunny. I can type white and gray rabbit cartoon standing eating a carrot, and one of the 4 will be Bugs Bunny, because that's how diffusion models work. If I type duck and bunny, bunny and black duck, 50s cartoon hunting wabbit season, guess who I'm going to get? I'm going to get Bugs and Daffy. Now, I didn't type Bugs Bunny. I didn't type Daffy Duck, but it's in there. Midjourney can't even take out the prompt Bugs Bunny without outputting Bugs Bunny. It is complete copyright infringement. And so the other one with Cox Cable, they're letting people download music illegally and not throttling them because they say it's too complicated to keep track. They only kicked 35 people off their system last year for stealing music. They kicked over 600,000 people off their system for not paying. Oh, they have granular stats. They just don't want to be responsible. And so the Supreme Court doesn't really understand this either. Justice Barrett actually had a real good conversation about really what's going on underneath the hood, but there's trouble.
I bet, yeah, because that's the trademark too. When you're talking about the colors and everything else, it's not just the copyright, and so you've got both forms of IP that are being infringed on.
Yeah, if you type Mickey Mouse, you're going to get Mickey Mouse. If you type cartoon mouse, one of them will be Mickey Mouse, but another one will be Ratatouille. What you do is you lock copyright the way it was established in 1790, and you go, we have a new language for copyright, and it addresses large language models. If we don't do that, we're going to keep moving the goalposts.
And so what about changes in generative content that may process but not output? And so, like, let's say there's a large language model, and it's scanning images of ducks and rabbits and everything else, and Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny are in those image caches. But there's a restriction on any outputs that would potentially match any copyright or trademarked character or color combination.
Understood. So you're going to tell a $500 billion company, OpenAI, that they have to create a fingerprint mechanism as well in order to go through every single image and make sure that it doesn't have any relation to copyrighted material. That's what you're going to have to push on the government and on OpenAI. There were a number of people from the Concept Art Association who spoke at Stanford. Their work. I mean, look, see this behind me? I kind of made this in Midjourney for an idea I have. I didn't hire a concept artist because I'm an individual guy. If a studio wanted to make this, maybe they'd hire a concept artist, or maybe they'd skip over it because they can make it in Midjourney. It's a conversation. I know.
That's
the only way to do it right, quite frankly, is to enforce copyright, have them start over. But what about China? So let me deal with this. These large corporations, Google, Microsoft, Meta, their only obligation is to the stockholder, right? That's how a corporation is set up. Now, we're talking about using AI for national defense. Do you want the stockholder providing for a national defense? No, it is our government's job to protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. Our government is not seeing the future and is not protecting us. So China, on the other hand, is very well organized. You're not going to speak against Xi Jinping. You're not going to speak against the government. So they, who, by the way, have some of the best scientists around now because they're educated and focused on science, are doing great papers on AI, and they're way ahead of us. On September 1st, they announced their labeling standards for China for AI labeling. If you want to trade with China, you have to follow their labeling standards. Where are we? We have no labeling standards. They started moving, and our current administration canceled the entire executive order on all labeling standards. It's not a matter of if a bad situation is going to happen, it's a matter of when. And may it be peaceful. That's my opinion. So really, the answer to your earlier question, and sorry I deviated so much, is the only way to really do this right, in my opinion, is to actually create an ethical AI LLM, one that is completely ethical. It's sourced ethically, it's handled ethically, and have everybody realize, oh no, this is a good one. Let's invest, put our money, put our time, let's get our answers from an ethically sourced AI. It's not like organic food. It won't go bad. That, quite frankly, I think a few $billion should be dumped into an ethical AI.
One of the ironic things about the mindset of product design in Silicon Valley is that it's like if it can't be used for both good and evil, it's considered a bad product. And so those things where, you know, Sam Altman was sitting next to Pikachu joking about, I hope they don't sue us. Like that's part of it, because like when a product does that, it creates a certain virality. And that I think is where a lot of the issues are kind of stemming from. And
Yeah, I mean, look at what half our country is up to. It's a little bit scary. But here's the other thing to just keep in mind. There is a huge Christian coalition. I kind of call a coalition group of people who believe AI is a false god and that the original sin of AI is theft. Thou shalt not steal. I've had a lot of conversations with Christians. Steve Bannon is very, very against this moratorium on AI safety. You know, people on both sides of the aisle. And by the way, you know, I'm a Bernie bro, so I'm all the way on the other side. But I have connections with the Bannon camp because I think it's really important that we recognize we have to do something right, and we're doing a lot of things wrong. Let me give you an example. We talked earlier about the AI safety conversation, SB 53, by an organization I'm part of called C2PA. It's a labeling standards organization. What kind of labeling would you put on an AI for safety? First of all, I said, we got to talk to OpenAI and Google, who are members. But the bill has no specifics. So here's a specific that the EU has, that China has, that we should probably have. If you have a large language model and it's at the level of ChatGPT 3.5, it's safe. It probably knows a little bit of chemistry. Now, if you have something that knows college level chemistry, you might want to look at it. If you have one that could teach a human how to make a chemical or biological weapon, you need to give that a level 3. So there's level 1, 2, 3. And that's, you know, something that you need to test out and work out in terms of safety before you release. And by the way, there's also level 4, which is keep it in the lab. We need to actually label these things in a standard way so that if Google, if Meta, if OpenAI has a 4, everybody knows how to handle it. And if they have a 1, let it go. And if it has a 3, someone has to accept the liability if someone makes a chemical and biological weapon. Nobody's labeling these standards yet. And of course, the AI companies aren't jumping to it. Those are conversations that need to happen. And by the way, they are happening in the EU. They are happening in China. So we're losing the battle. We don't even know it.
I'm
sorry.
No,
Sorry, man.
It's good. I mean, I feel like I'm listening to a speech from Braveheart. The passion really shines through, and you're right about a lot of the ethics of it.
Here's the question: what are ethics? Let's really. This is my hobby, AI ethics. That people, groups like Anthropic, are talking about ethical AI. How do you do it, Claude? In fact, they're kind of leading in that conversation, but nobody has defined what ethics is. Ethics comes from Aristotle. It's theory, it's phronesis, it's the common wisdom, and then there's praxis, which is the action. It all leads to something called eudaimonia, which is human flourishing. So note, the first one is theoria, thou shalt not kill. Don't kill people. That's a pretty good theory. Now, if
Yeah.
you look at the phronesis, the wisdom, well, the Bible says it, the Bhagavad Gita says it, the Geneva Convention says it. There's a lot of people who say it, so it might be a good thing. And in the practice, how do you not kill people or let them be killed? This is kind of trippy. You ever read Isaac Asimov? Isaac Asimov in 1940 wrote the first robot books, and there are 3 fundamental laws of robotics. And the first one is a robot must not harm people or allow people to come to harm. It supersedes all the. Why don't we put that ethic at the very top of an ethical AI? Don't kill people, don't let people be killed, and create a bunch of engineering specs such that it can sense if a human life is in danger and use an LLM to drive it. And then do it in a distributed architecture. So if anyone hallucinates, all the other AIs go, wait, hold on a second, buddy. You're a little bit out of line. And the final thing is, well, what about the military? What about the police? What if they have to kill? And the conversation is, that's not my domain. I'm telling you it's ethical. If you want to override that with a military command, I can't control that. But if I have a robot that follows ethical AIs, whether it's intangible, like an AI agent, or an actual robot, it would be nice if my robot couldn't kill you.
So I agree wholeheartedly. I think the dilemma at this point is really it's the definition of ethics according to Aristotle, and there's the definition of ethics according to the corporate world. And ethics in corporate is basically about how good the lawyers are at drafting and negotiating.
A corporation is set up to have all the rights of a human being, but none of the responsibilities. It is essentially a sociopath. The corporation's ethics are we staying in with the federal guidelines? Are we staying within the law? Otherwise, do anything you can to get money for the stockholder. The question is, can a corporation be ethical only if it's in its bylaws? And I don't see any corporate bylaws with ethics in them.
Oh, I don't even want to think about the length of the corporate bylaws for a company like OpenAI. Like that's going to be like Shakespeare.
Well, they're supposed to be a nonprofit. It happened every 80 years. Every 80 years, go back, Second World War, Civil War, French Revolution. People get separated. I mean, the rich in France were nuts. The poor in France were many. I left you speechless. But here's the main question, and I think everybody should focus on this. Why won't AI harm us? And if you can answer that question, I'll give you $10,000. That's where we are.
Right. There are no guarantees. And so I think that the issue now with AI, especially if you are allowing these models to run without specific ethical constraints, is that it's going to constantly rewrite itself. Like that an AI model can generate another AI model from itself, and then another, and just it's in a constant state of, and so.
Right. The optimization model and the recursive learning model are very important, things to kind of keep in mind with this. But note this. I think we have a misconception about AI. I keep hearing about artificial general intelligence. Now, you and I, Sean, we're bags of meat. We evolved with our intelligence because that's the only way our species would survive. If you don't believe in Darwin, maybe this conversation isn't for everybody. But the point is, our senses. By the way, that's why there'll never be great actors that are computers. Acting is about survival. It's about people by the fire, telling each other stories and telling what to not to eat and what to eat. We have a whole different species now. Not technically a species, but a binary species that their only stimulus and response, like B.F. Skinner stuff, stimulus and response is what we say, this is bad, so there's punishment. It's called reward learning, which is how we teach our models. But that's not the same as a human surviving. So when they get as intelligent as we are, let's hope we don't give them a survival instinct, paranoia, hatred, bipolar disorder, bad moods, sociopathy, and all the other stuff we have. Computers are smarter than you at some things. I can feed it an Oxford physics problem and have it solve it in 17 seconds and show its work. And by the way, I can also ask it how to plant my garden. In some ways, it's smarter than you and I are. Whether or not we're going to reach artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence, as far as I'm concerned, what they're expecting is something that's just like a human, but smarter. It's never going to happen. They're not us. If we fuse with our machines, that's a different conversation.
That fusion where AI no longer tends to its own garden, but it starts to tend to ours directly is going to be at least a decade away, I think. But in terms of existing constraints, yeah.
But if I told you 100 years ago, it's 10 years away, you'll be like, oh, that's not very far off, really. Now 10 years? Here's the thing. I've read a lot of a gentleman named Ray Kurzweil. If our listeners haven't really read his stuff, he invented the modern synthesizer for Stevie Wonder. He's a brilliant inventor, but also he wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. And basically, if you look, I think I'm going in the right direction. If you look at technology, it's almost linear to the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, et cetera. But now as we approach the 1900s, it's becoming an exponential graph. And once we reach a certain level of computer intelligence, like you said, recursive learning, computers making everything, we're going to hit a law where we're not going to be able to predict what happens next. And we are at that knee point right now.
Yeah, and super intelligence, I think, will start to bring some of those issues. Human beings fusing with AI is a different animal entirely. And
well, we're already doing it. Just so you know, we're not connecting it to our nerves, but my Apple Watch times all my workouts, measures my heartbeats. I spend most of my day looking at this screen. Either that or I have my earphones on. Pretty soon, Apple's going to have these. And that's why I think the new business model is going to happen. If you guys have a chance, go to the Apple Store and get the demo for the Apple Vision Pro. Now,
Okay.
Apple's been working on augmented reality for a very long time, since the early iPads. Now, note, Meta has goggles. There are other people who have. I put on these things and I was on a beach with sound that actually moved. So if I go like this, the water I hear this side, et cetera. I turn around, there's the back of the beach, the dunes behind me. I did like this with my hands and all of a sudden a 100-inch screen opened in front of me on the beach. And I played Avatar like an IMAX theater. And I turned around and I still saw the dunes and I heard the TV behind me. So note, this is a $4,000 product, but they're not selling a lot. And I don't think Apple cares because soon it's just going to be this with the same kind of surround sound, same kind of surround look. So I'm going to go like this and I'm going to see a screen. Or if I want directions, I'm going to see footprints on the ground where I want to go. And if I look at this wall, it always plays an ad. And that ad is geared toward my social media prefs and everybody else sees a different ad. And it's integrated in real time by live AI that's showing humans, synthetic humans talking. Or people will be eating lunch in different parts of the world in virtual reality, or the porn industry, I'm telling you, is already taking off in that world. And that's where a lot of the money is going to be made. That's where I think we were going in the next 5 years. And I think we're moving away from the whole theatrical distribution model. I have a dear friend from college who's a big Hollywood writer, and he's been writing for VR for the past 2 years. So 10 years off, yes. However, the connection with our AI is going to be much closer in 5 years.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, Elon Musk and the whole, brain electrode, how far are we from the Matrix? I don't think we're that close, but I'm sure there are a bunch of people who are going to go crazy because someone stuck an electrode in them and it didn't quite work out.
Oh God. I mean, so in terms of the clinical trials for brain-computer interface, that is going to be a long journey. And so the degree to which you can integrate something like what's happening with the Apple glasses it's not in the cards in the near future. And yeah, that will be a different ballgame entirely. But if people can actually edit YouTube videos with their brain now, then I think that it's potentially in the cards. And that kind of AI integration to human beings is slightly frightening.
It is slightly frightening because Ray Kurzweil wrote The Age of Spiritual Machines in like 2000. And he was talking about two scenarios, the heaven scenario and the hell scenario. We've seen the hell scenario in a lot of movies, Terminator, Ex Machina, 2001. We've seen it. But the heaven scenario is such that we all fuse with our machines in a way like maybe we have nanobots that clean out our heart valves. That would be awesome. Maybe we cure cancer. Maybe we fix this longevity conversation and we also keep the birth rate stable. We go to Mars. Maybe robots go to Mars and terraform it before we ever get there. There are a whole bunch of ways. I've been waiting for this all my life. But since 2000, no one worked on the ethics. And I blame myself for thinking that people who know better than I do would do that. No, I had to write a blueprint for AI ethics because it doesn't seem anyone else has one. And so we are at that point where we have a choice as humanity. And Sean, I'm going to tell you how it's going to go down. There will be a 9/11, Pearl Harbor, or COVID level event involving AI at some point. Again, tell me why that won't happen. People will get hurt, or the entire eastern seaboard will lose its electricity because of an Iranian hacker or whatever. And then we're going to wake up and go, okay, we got to take this seriously. And all the laws that have been sitting on the bench will all of a sudden be the only other alternative to the people screaming, turn off the internet. And business can't afford to turn off the internet. So we need a pathway to pivot quickly after a bad event happens. It's how our country's always been.
I think it's fair, and some of that's already happened in terms of political interference, and people will talk about how the Russian government is in bed with Yandex or it's Chinese with Baidu. But the truth of the matter is that most governments have some degree of collaboration with social media companies.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about that. I spoke with Dean Ball. He is the creator of Trump's AI action plan. And I said to him, what if the president goes on YouTube and says there are missiles heading for Miami? What if Jerome Powell gets on channels, it's his deep fake, the chairman of the Fed, and says he's raising interest rates up 2 points and tanks the stock market? He said, well, I think people are a little more discerning than that. Well, if you've seen War of the Worlds and how that went down, maybe not. I said, okay, how about 50 local mayors announcing shooters in their local schools as a precursor to a major cyber attack? He said, well, that's probably a more likely scenario. Sean, sure, YouTube may be able to fingerprint a video and see if there's a president saying missiles are heading for Miami, but you can't plug all the holes. What if planes start crashing? You remember the Pentagon toward the beginning of the year, that helicopter went down and everyone was saying, oh my gosh, has AI taken over? I mean, I'm just saying we are not being careful.
And so on that subject, how are the AI watermarks being utilized, and which platforms sort of recognize those? And so in terms of uploading and downloading content.
I'm glad you asked this question because that's in one way in which I'm in business and I really care, and that's the way we protect performance. But just note one thing, and I want to say this with as much alacrity and emphasis as possible. Watermarking doesn't work. We have to work it. If we don't train, we put on a black belt. So watermarking needs to be combined with a couple of things. I wrote 3 bills as part of this conversation. Basically, if you guys don't know, watermarking is putting an invisible, inaudible label on all media. Whether it's video, it should be invisible. If it's audio, it should be inaudible. If you listen to a watermarked Adele song, you should hear Adele just like you did in high fidelity before it was watermarked. I'm sure her reps don't want us changing her music with a watermark, but that watermark has to have 3 things. If you're going to use human identity, for example, Sean, your face, the first of all, we need to define informed consent for the use of your face. Medical has it. Education has it. Even the cookie pop-ups. Have you noticed how much they didn't put those cookie pop-ups out of the love of their heart. They did it because it's now the law in California. So no, informed consent means that you are fully informed about the creation and use of any digital replica, your likeness, voice, movement, biometrics. So if you're an actor in this movie. Well, how about plush toys based on the movie? How about commercials, promos? Well, if I don't tell you before I use your face, I don't have permission. I need to re-ask permission. That's the first thing. But also, humans. It goes for if the president, I don't care what your politics are, has something that only security level 3 or higher should see, That should be permissioned somewhere to make it real clear. So the first thing is informed consent, which, by the way, children don't have, their parents have. Let's set that. The second thing is watermarking, is what the new AI transparency laws in California called latent disclosures. Manifest means you see it like a label. Latent means you can't see or hear it. And basically, these need to be columnized by industry. For example, actors, when I'm on film, when I'm on mic, what do I want connected with my material? Well, how about my SAG-AFTRA name, encrypted ID, who the producer was, where they live, so everyone can stalk them if they steal my stuff, the DGA, the WGA, the IATSE numbers, because our brother and sister unions are contractually connected to that media, and stealing that media is also stealing from them. And then it needs to be combined in a manifest that can be read. The watermark refers to that manifest. On the media, it goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by the way, it needs to be done for medical. If I'm a doctor and I look at a chart, it needs to be permissioned. If I'm military and I'm selling you 150,000 rounds of ammunition, we better make sure that I'm me and you're you. So that, and finally, everything is a Cooperative Players Act. Everything that shows you media, this Zoom meeting, YouTube, TikTok, a 3D game engine, Netflix, just has to check for your permission and also the originality of that particular piece of media to see if it can play it for you. Let me give you an example in your phone. If Apple kicks on, they can protect 1 billion people with one iOS update. You're my cousin. I'm taking a picture of you and I'm sending the picture to grandma. I say only family and Instagram. That's the only place it can go. I send it to grandma. Grandma sends it to Aunt Susan and Uncle Bob. Everyone can read it. If Uncle Bob tries to send it to his friend, it won't play on their phone because it hasn't been permissioned. And it can go on Instagram. But if someone from Instagram wants to put it on TikTok, TikTok sees it's not permissioned for TikTok. Otherwise, someone will deepfake the president. It's also how we performers protect, manage, and monetize our data. And it's also how the FBI kicks the door down of child pornographers. And it all goes back to this. There is one law that just passed in California that says your phone or your mic has to watermark from now on. It's right out of camera. Never been touched by AI. Watermark it there. That's the point of capture. And a little bit farther down the rabbit hole, I spoke with one of the camera guys at Sony. Well, if I fix your red eye in my camera, that's AI. So I actually should label, for example, if I want to take a picture for court, AI has been applied. They could throw it out of court just because it was applied in camera. So yeah, so I declare red eye was done. Well, does the case involve red eye? If not, it's admissible, but I have to declare it. If there are 5 bullet holes in the wall, we don't care if it fixed red eye. So these are nuanced conversations that need to happen on all levels: consent, provenance, and just checking for both of them.
Speaking of full-time acting, would you be willing to take us back in time a little bit and talk about NCIS and any roles you played? Maybe how they inspired your ability to sort of command the room the way that you do now.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was, I've been an actor since I was in college, and I was a stand-up for 30 years, so I'm good with a room. I played the deputy director of the FBI on NCIS, Wayne Sweeney. It's a lot of fun. I did the flight attendant season 2, which was all fun. In fact, I just shot an episode of The Rookie that's going to come out next year. I do voices. I did voices for the new How to Train Your Dragon movie. But it all comes from the fact that I'm a member of the Actors Studio. I work my tail off on my craft. I believe that an AI will never be able to do the fireplace scene from Extremities the way I can, because I'm tied up. I'm blindfolded. Someone is throwing bleach in my face and poking me with a stick. That's human animal behavior. You're going to tell the actor, okay, a little angrier here. Okay, a little more scared here. No, you're reacting to bleach that you're breathing in. These are profound human physiological and chemical responses. And so what I do as an actor at the Actors Studio is sense memory. It's scene work. It's really listening, really speaking. And so can Tilly Norwood. As of now, the commercial world is 80% non-union anyway. They're totally going to go with these quick clips. However, they're not going to get the same emotional reaction as they are from real humans, because we can all somehow tell. Nobody is going to burst in tears because an AI looked emotional or experienced something. Sean, nobody cares if you can hit this emotion and that emotion and that emotion in a scene. 95% of actors know how to play the scene, and 95% of actors don't work. What it really is about is what brought you from this emotion to that emotion, the space between notes, as Chopin always said. And if you look at the great actors, they are not working on the lines, they are working on the journey. So that is my life's work. And I'm grateful to be a working actor in Hollywood who could pay my insurance. And AI will, if we let them, take all the background work away. It'll take all the dubbing work away. But by the way, here's a conversation. If I'm an NCIS and it gets translated into 120 language, and they usually would hire 120 dubbers for it, right? What I think should probably happen is all that dubbing work that they do in AI, it should come to me. I don't mean that I necessarily want to do that to the dubbing community, but they can't just get it for free. They're using my voice now. They're not using someone who sounds like me. They're using my voice to dub, which is a hire by union rules. So yeah, the stars are going to make more money, but it also makes sure that, more money stays in the health plan and a whole bunch of other things. And these are economics. This is business.
Yeah, I was at a panel yesterday on whether or not AI can create an Academy Award-winning film by 2029, and they made jokes about how the lawyers are going to make a fortune on this. And when it comes down to redubbing in 120 different languages, I can imagine that would be a part of their territory.
Yeah. It would be, I think it's even more than that. It is a fundamental shift on a level that is like the invention of the wheel or fire. I call it Fire 2.0. In fact, the only people who are really going to benefit right now are the people who can afford to plug it into everything. The rest of us have to recognize that with ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and Gemini and all the others, we can do a lot of stuff in our home, but it doesn't necessarily bring money in. And with these big companies, all they're doing is plugging into their money pipelines and cutting costs and increasing productivity. By the way, you're a corporation. That's your job.
No, I think that, yeah,
I mean, if we look at the sewing machines, there were a bunch of artisans who would sew by hand, and not everybody could afford clothes. Well, the sewing machine came out, the artisans lost work. And if they weren't willing to accept a fifth of the money to sit at a sewing machine in a factory, then they lost their work. But we're talking now all sectors. Two of my best friends are lawyers. You know what they asked me? They said, what do you think, Eric? How are we going to have senior lawyers anymore when the junior lawyers can be replaced? What happens in 15 years? I said, I hope we live that long. Everybody across all, there is a group, from what I understand, in Long Beach, California, biggest port in the world, that was tasked to build a futuristic port that used robots. And when they finished, they fired everybody. If these companies don't want to be ethically responsible, there are going to be other consequences. They have the opportunity to do so still. They don't have to keep doing this. They don't have to. But here's where we are, just so you know, Sean. If you live in a bad neighborhood and you leave your door open and someone steals your TV, all of a sudden, everyone in your neighborhood knows you leave your door open, right? If our federal government next year can really get it together and pass incredibly important safety laws that all the, quite frankly, computer geniuses are saying, like, and also the groups like Encode, who are great, the Keep AI Safe, there's Pause AI. These other companies, they really should be listened to not only by legislators, but by the general public. I think we need public awareness. If we can do it in 2026, I think we'll survive. If we wait 3 or 4 more years, I don't think we have a shot. So that's why we had the first mass mobilization for AI legislation in human history last Monday for AB 412 in Stanford, California. And we need to continue raising the awareness. I'm not saying kill AI. Hey, I just wrote 3 federal bills without paying $200,000 for a lawyer. I'm good with AI, but we have to consider the ramifications.
It is going to be interesting to see how this plays out with the remaining media companies after the acquisition of Warner Brothers.
Well, look, let's face it. Netflix got a good deal from our union. This is how it worked back then. We had the cable cataclysm, but then Netflix said, well, this is an emerging technology. We're trying to compete with Blockbuster. We're sending CDs and we just want to see what it's like if we put a couple videos online. Can you make us a deal? And SAG-AFTRA said, sure. Then Netflix became huge. It was time to renegotiate. Netflix said, whoa, we're not going backwards. And this is where we are. My NCIS episodes are on Netflix. I didn't give them permission. People say, I saw you on Netflix. I say, I'm sorry you didn't see me on network because I'm not going to get residuals for it. And HBO is a smaller paradigm. Netflix is renowned for their analytics that they won't share. So is HBO. It'll be interesting to watch those analytics merge. And whether or not SAG-AFTRA can have access to it, which we should by law. Eventually. Like, how many times did you appear on that show? How many clicks? Oh, and by the way, I had a presentation for the TV Academy recently. I say, guys, if you have it, like, I was on the Flight Attendant season 2. Didn't do well. 6 episodes. All right. But they're paying me just as much as if I were on Succession. So here's my question. What if they pay by click? The people that saw Succession, they pay the actors more and I get paid less because nobody watched my show. I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that. The commerce is run by eyeballs. So a granular pay-per-click structure works for both groups. What it doesn't work for is the CEOs because they want more money. The stockholders, they want more money. But the reality is any business model that's based on theft is not a legitimate business model. If you are a restaurant, if you are a warehouse, you have to publicly post your inventory. AI companies, Netflix, they really should have the same responsibility. I know I'm pumping in a lot of sound bites in an hour, but here we are.
Oh no, I think my head just exploded when I thought about reporting all the AI infrastructure. I'm thinking of like how many millions of pages of code would be there.
Well, it's not really a matter of pages anymore. It's a matter of a cloud that can be searched in a non-traditional manner by a computer that recognizes patterns better than anything else ever has in history. We need to consider that just like the British High Court and the Supreme Court didn't understand AI, our legislators don't get it and they're not talking with the experts. Not really. Let's face it, if you are a senator from Illinois, you've got crime problems, power problems, water problems, 100 different problems. AI is just one, and there ain't no AI in the room. If you don't have water, you have people dying. I always say, like, I call it the T-Rex phenomenon. If there's a T-Rex near you, I know we've never seen a T-Rex, but I'm guessing it smells bad. It makes a lot of noise. And when it comes close, your water shakes. Now show me what an AI looks like. Nobody's seen it. Nobody's heard it. It hasn't actually really killed anybody yet. It's not being taken as seriously as all the other priorities a state senator has.